All right. Welcome to panel 2 for the Oklahoma City Police Athletic League Rocket League fundraiser tournament. And this is the second panel, which we will be talking about Oklahoma esports and gaming execution that has defined Oklahoma up into this juncture, well before the time of the virality of the topic of gaming and esports in mainstream. So I am Mike Moog Aguilar. I'm the director of esports for the University of Oklahoma. I have been in this space now for only 4.5 years, where plenty of people in this panel will absolutely triple that or double that at the very least, and have very unique tracks as well as plenty of convergence. And so this panel is designed to help us explore the Oklahoma landscape and its champions before this time of current visibility and really hype with the word, as we see tons of universities getting in the space, tons of high schools starting to get in the space, both in the Oklahoma market, in the global market, national market, and everything in between. And now we need to talk about the general community sector, the bigger sector, the sector that actually got us to this point well before these times of elevation. And so that's what this panel is about. So I'm going to just go down the line, and Jack, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Jack Counts. I'm the CEO of the GetRECt Gaming Club. Do you want me to go and
give us a small overview
All right,
of
cool.
what you do.
Cool. Well, GetRECt started in 2016, and I've kind of been the lead on that project for a long time. GetRECt it's technically an LLC, but it's also a community. Our staff is, largely volunteer staff, people from the community that wanted to commit more time and effort into making what we do happen. And what is it that we do? We primarily run tournaments for Riot Games titles, League of Legends, Legends of Runeterra, and Teamfight Tactics. And our main event is a league that we do 3 times a year, 12 weeks in the fall and spring, and condensed a bit down to like 8 or 9 in the summer. And we've always had that sync up with school semesters. Just to hit you with, sorry, were you gonna ask a question?
No, I was gonna say, when you started in 2016, how many people were involved in the community versus in 2021?
People that were involved in the community. So I played in just little League of Legends tournaments here and there that were popped up, at little comic shops or small side attractions at nerdy conventions. And those would happen just a couple times a year, and they were plagued with various, logistical problems because it takes a lot to have a bunch of gaming computers all with quality internet and everything. And so Alex 2 and I started doing tournaments. We started with just 8 teams pulled out of these people that would occasionally go to these in-person events to start a league and to just hit with some numbers. We have since, and over the course of the last 5 years, went from that initial, I guess it was actually, 8 teams, to we currently have 37. So it's gotten a lot bigger with starters and subs. That's well over 200 players because there's a lot of subs. Our Discord server, we've gotten up to 1,400 members and 1,500 followers on Twitch, which you might think that's impressive or not, depending on who you are. But I'm very proud of those numbers. And we're currently on the 14th rendition, I guess, of our main tournament right now, and the finals for that happen in May.
Awesome. Thanks, Jack. Awesome. Rashard, tell us your story, man.
What's going on? Rashard Hutchins, owner operator of Game Over Entertainment. We were official in 2015, but I've been running tournaments since 1998. Even if that was 2-on-2 basketball tournaments with the friends in the neighborhood. We started because it was some friends that I went to college with. We did a couple of events there, and we really wanted to do the sports games. So we ran a couple of those events, and they didn't take off as good. So, and we ran a couple of fighter games. That's how I ran into Ricky. Ricky was the first one to hit me up. It's like, hey, you using monitors or TVs? I said, we got TVs. He said, no, baby, don't do that. You got to use the monitors. We got frame rates. We dropping. So, and that's when Ricky didn't even know me. He jumped in the inbox and put me on. Our first event was April 2015, Test Your Might with Mortal Kombat X when it was still new at the YMCA Northside in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I think we had 22, 25 people for our first event. So that was really good at the time. And what we noticed is, if it wasn't for money up front with the sports games, a lot of players who got beat in Madden wouldn't come back. But with the fighting games, people will lose. They want to get better. So we naturally gravitated towards that. So we kind of became known as a fighting game organization. And that's pretty much it on our end.
Awesome. Thank you. Ricky, tell me your story, man.
Hey, how's it going? Ricky McNeil, owner and CEO founder of HXE Gaming. We do everything competitive gaming, whether it's fighting games, shooters, sports games. We do a little bit of everything. Smash. We dabbled in League of Legends for a while, but we found Jack, and he's like, you know what? Let's support him. We host an event once a year that we collaborate with a bunch of other organizations and TOs called Super Bit Wars, which is at the University of Oklahoma last. And we've been growing for a long time. I've been owning HXC since 2008, but I've been running tournaments since I was in 8th grade. My dad got upset with too many people in my garage and kind of said, hey, you have to do something. My electric bill's too high. And that's where the passion really started to become a TO.
Awesome. Puyan.
Hi, I'm Puyan Nikju. I'm an independent esports and event consultant, which is a super fancy way of saying people pay me to make tournaments happen. So I do everything from advertising, tournament logistics, scheduling, and then just actual running of the event the day of. So I'm mostly known for Smash. That's how I got my start in 2014. Just kind of started going to tournaments, and I realized I didn't have the drive to continuously improve and get better, but I really enjoyed the people in the communities. So I'd go to tournaments still, and I'd be sitting around and want to be done faster. So I started helping out local TOs, and then eventually started hosting my own events. And then at a certain point, at the time, I think Smash Hit was only like 12 people would show up to a tournament. And we had like 256 at Super Bit Wars in 2019. So it's grown a lot. And we've done a lot of work to make that happen, and it's pretty exciting. But I've definitely dabbled in a bunch of different games, except for League of Legends, because I knew the logistical nightmare that was, not owning a bunch of gaming PCs.
Yeah.
So I was just like, you know what? I'll just let other people do that. So good job, Jack, because that sounds really difficult.
Really good job. Yep.
So great. And so as we transition to our next question, I really want to kind of connect some dots here and why this is significant for this event to be used for this platform. Oklahoma City Police Athletics League is the birth of what every one of your stories started at. It's an organic opportunity where we saw an opportunity to impact others and be a part of something bigger. And so Oklahoma City Police Athletics League came into this space wanting to do just that, where they wanted to be sensitive to the cultures that were around it. They wanted to learn from the people that were executing and not necessarily say, this is the only way that's going to be done because we're the ones in charge. They're completely open to the ideas of partnerships, of working with this to bolster. And the end result is, again, impacting youth, which will eventually become adults, which will eventually be contributors of our communities and so forth as we continue to grow, whether that is a business for education and higher education from my seat, whether that is a consumer of the communities that you guys represent and advocate for, or even just attending the events that are put on through the spread and collective of energies in the region. So Oklahoma City Police Athletics League was a perfect opportunity for us to use that, because that energy is often misunderstood. Or a lot of times we have seen entities, not just in Oklahoma, but all over the place, where they get the idea that this is an opportunity to generate revenue and interest and impact. And it absolutely is. No one will argue that. However, they're not calling upon resources that are right in their backyard that represent its cultures. And they don't represent the very communities that have already been built over years, if not decades plus now, for some of you, that truly bring a lot to the table and a lot to offer that can keep the overhead lower, keep the community engagement higher, and the impact of intentionality more true to what it should be, while we do evolve the scene for more business opportunities, more revenue, and other, instead of just coming in and saying, we're just going to throw a lot of money at this, because if you build it, does not mean that they will come. And so I really wanted to relay that before we transition into the next. So for the next component, we already kind of dabbled into this. Let's talk about that step past when you just got started. What was the iconic moments? What were the things that you struggled with that were the things that really defined you in this role? And I'm going to switch it up from what we planned, what we're going to talk about a little bit. So let's just shoot off the hip a little bit. I'm going to start with Ricky. When did you switch? When did it finally click in your head that this is what you wanted to do, that you wanted to take the next step and escalate this and elevate this even further than anything before?
It's when I talked to Solidus. I was always so, it was kind of crazy how it went. When I was in the 8th grade, I had these big tournaments. They were just big, right? I go to the military, I graduate from school, I come back, And I'm thinking it's going to be the big thing. You know, same thing when I was in Korea hosting video game tournaments. They were massive every time. I was dealing with 300 people, man brackets in Korea. But then I come back to Oklahoma, I'm hosting a tournament. It's like 8 people there. I'm like, where's everybody at? What has happened? You know? And eventually it led to me just doing tournaments, and I run into Solidus, and he's like, hey, here's the things you're messing up. You're trying to make money and you're doing it the wrong way. Money will come later. You have to do all these things right before you do it correctly. You're doing Smash tournaments and you know nothing about Smash. Cool, you got all the resources for it and you got all the money for it, but you don't know what you're doing. So why are you doing Smash? Let me take over Smash and you focus on the things that you know how to do. And that's when it clicked. I was like, oh, I can actually reach out to somebody that knows how to do this and actually do it themselves, you know, and it just kind of started progressing to where I was like, okay, I'd meet someone like Puyon, I met a Rashard, I met a Jack, and now it's like I could host a full-blown major for every type of game if I wanted to because of the people I know, not because of me. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's that conversation with Solidus when I realized, oh, I'm doing these big events and they're not well managed at that time, and it can be a lot overwhelming no matter how much money or how much equipment you have.
So let me pause you a second because we mentioned a name that we haven't defined yet. Tell us who Solidus is.
Solidus is a guy named Forrest Sharp, who was one of the biggest TOs in Oklahoma. He's a community league. This guy was so awesome. For an example, 12 years ago, before he passed, he told me about League of Legends. And I thought it was crazy. I'm like, why would anybody want to play on one map or one stupid game on PC? And he's like, listen, this is the future of esports. This is, well, at the time, the competitive gaming. This is what everyone's going to strive to. So Solidus was the guy that, like Puyon, that everyone went to for consultation of how to run a video game tournament. And he was, unfortunately, he passed away right before our first Super Bit Wars in a car accident. I do feel like if he was still here, we'll be even further along because of his expertise. Thank God we have someone like Puyon and Rashard to help carry this community further than, you know, what we could be. We fell behind, but, you know, Solidus was a very great person. He was a great TO, and I wish he was around. But the good thing, we got people like Jack and yourself to keep pushing forward, right?
Right. So it's iconic as a name because one of the things that I've wanted to do with OU is not step on the toes of the pre-existing energies and to highlight them. And so at the beginning of March, we just announced our scholarships for the university open to the globe in the namesake of this student who did graduate from OU before he passed and then was working on his master's, then posthumously awarded his master's. So a little bit of Oklahoma gaming history right there. And then also another way to bring it back to life through one of the biggest and most formidable branded universities in the region. So let's move over to Rashard. When was that pivotal moment for you? What helped you kind of say, okay, I want to commit myself to these ridiculously long hours and this passion of a community?
So first and foremost, I think everybody on this panel, the only reason they stayed in it so long is because they love video games outside of everything. And even if you came in it for the money, you realize real quick, it ain't about the money. It's about the people. So for me, I think it was that first tournament I told you about, like the energy I felt in there with the gamers, how passionate they were, you know, how early they got there. You know, I said it was going to start at 2. They came at 12. It won't even set up yet. And I'm like, okay, what are these boys doing? And, you know, then they tried to stay after. We had to kick them out. So I think it's more of the players that were involved in the FGC that kind of like, it was like, aha, you know what I'm saying? And then also running across Ricky, that was like the biggest resource to me at the time. And I think I was naive, like most people who came in. I was like, oh, we don't have any options. You know, they don't have anywhere to go play. But once you become an organizer and then people start reaching out to you, you just notice you entered the matrix. Like we see everything that's going on behind the scenes now that people aren't blind because there's still people down the street from the event who's like, oh, I didn't even know about that. I didn't know you guys were doing that. And it's just an easy search on Facebook. So just the people I ran into and then also the players, that was like the aha moment for me.
Right. And so I don't want you guys to change, but I'm gonna function as a little bit of a dictionary for a general audience that has never heard about some of these terms. So FGC stands for Fighting Game Community. These are titles like Street Fighter, Tekken, Mortal Kombat, Dragon Ball Fighters, and Smash kind of loosely as it's kind of its own cultural thing, but can be aligned with this singular word, which is a global acronym for Fighting Game Community. Puyan, let's transition to you. When was that light bulb moment, and when you decided to say, okay, I'm going to dedicate some life to this in a real way?
So like I said earlier, after I stopped competing, I was just going to events and helping out here and there. And there was one event that I remember I got to. It was probably like a weekly meetup. And I get there a little late because I had something to do. And immediately, like, 4 people are like, Puyan, please help. And I was like, what? And they're just like, we're so behind. I don't know what this guy's doing. He entered every bracket. He's supposed to be running the tournament. No one knows what. I think those are friendly setups over there now. Like, I don't know what's going on. We want to leave. And I was like, man, I'm hungry. I just came to get food with you guys after. Okay, sure. And that was just kind of like, I got it done pretty quickly. We got out of there. And we were just eating after. And it was just like, man, you should just run your own tournaments. And I was like, I mean, I guess I could. It's not like it's. I started like, wheels turning, and I was at OU. I was a student at OU at the time, and I think 6 months prior to that, someone was just like, "We should make a club at OU to do Smash tournaments here." And I was like, "No, we have Smash tournaments. You should just support what we have, not like split everybody up." Everybody's like, "Yeah, you're right." And then I was just like, "I guess I could just make that club." So then that's how Sooner Smash Brothers was started. Which I have to give credit to my friend Seth, who was a freshman at OU with me and then transferred to UNT, because he gave me the name because he thought it would be funny. And he started a Smash Club at UNT also, called the UNT Brothers of Smash, which I thought was funny too. So shout outs to him. And then that eventually merged into the Esports Club that you created at OU, and it's still going. So that was really the thing, is when people told me that I should just do it myself. And I was like, I mean, yeah, sure, we'll give it a shot. And things just kept going well. There were struggles, but, it kind of snowballed.
Yeah, and it was interesting because that is absolutely a continuation story in my world. Looking at the origins of where things were started. And at that time, that was Kenny Tai, that was the president of that organization when we came into development and R&D phases in 2016, 2017. And one of the things that we were adamant about was, all right, Kenny, we wanted to kind of integrate these two worlds together because we're stronger collectively, but I don't want to take anything away from the Sooner community or the Sooner Smash community at all. I want to see how we can bolster it further while keeping you guys in power, and making sure that you guys are just under a different banner, but the dojo stays the same name, the people in charge of it stay the same name. Yes, there's going to be a little bit more compliance, but all I want to do is create new venues for you, new opportunities to expose it. Let's grow it bigger. If that means incentivizing it, or adding higher levels of production, what can we do to elevate this further? And we still have plenty of ways to go with that, as we finally hopefully come out of COVID here in the fall semester and can resume Sooners formally, because that community absolutely is the most hurting in just the collegiate sector of what we were developing, going from 51 weeks a year of Sooner Smash Sooner Smash Dojo to nothing. It's just been just bad, really, really bad. So, Jack, what was that turning point?
I kind of had two that are related but pretty different. One was just sort of me coming to terms with being a nerd, like outright. Going to a high school from a different middle school is always tough, and it's a very difficult period. I dated a girl for 2.5 years, and she literally never knew that I played League of Legends almost every day. Like, no joke. I hid it from pretty much everyone. I was just concerned, like some people would get flack for playing nerdy games when I was in high school. And then when I got to college, my roommate played Hearthstone, and that really just kind of was like, other people do this, and he was a real normal guy, and I was like, awesome. And I kind of started to build out that identity, going to tournaments. I won a t-shirt and some money at one of the HXC League of Legends tournaments forever ago. It was a big shirt. I still have it though. And so I started going to those tournaments, but I really faced some issues at maybe like DZ Comics where the setups were just not all the way there, or Tokyo and Tulsa, which was a big convention center. The internet just couldn't hold up and would be such a struggle. And I got with all these other players that were playing in these, and we figured out what it was we wanted, what it was we were missing. And from there, Alex 2 and I kind of created the idea of the OKLCS, and that sort of became a tournament. And as we started putting on those events, and I was kind of, progressing my identity of like accepting myself as a nerd after having a double life for 4 years, it just sort of became like an ingrained part of me running these tournaments and kind of being somebody, one of several people at the forefront of like a community, seeing it go from 8 teams, and then you slowly get enough interest where you have 16 teams, and that feels so good, making that step and having some more people be a part of it. And just hearing some of the people talk, throughout it, going to these, we would have an online portion and an in-person portion. And hearing people talk about, how cool it was to have something like that as early as, 4 years ago, just felt so cool. I've teared up before, like hearing Mike and other people talk about, like Kate and everyone today, like talking about high school esports and all these new programs. I'm just like, oh my God, I was diamond once in League of Legends. I'd be trying to, get ahead as a player if I grew up in that world. But I have just as much enjoyed trying to help create that world for someone else like me who wants to, play someday. And so kind of that series of moments, like the growth and me kind of accepting myself nerdy wise, helped be light bulb moments for me. And there have been a ton of cool highlights that have sort of strengthened that for me over time. OU Esports, helping found that with Mike at OU, was just so cool. And there have been little things too, like when the Microsoft store reached out to us to come run a tournament at their venue to bring some traffic and interest and energy in. And then it went well. And they were like, we need you back here as many times as you can come back here. And those kinds of things were just so good to hear, to see people having fun, to see somebody like Mike or like the Microsoft store or, many other people appreciating it. Those are always really cool moments as well. We've worked with a lot of cool groups and cool people. Some of which went off and started their own little esports thing a little while ago. And recently, one of our staff members for like 2 years, 2+ years, went and started working at Equinox, and then was offered just a position out of nowhere at Riot Games, and now she works there, which is crazy. So it's you meet a lot of cool people like Mike, Puyan, Ricky, Rashard, and it's so much fun to do all of this and get to be a creator in this space that didn't exist when I wanted it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's great. No. Okay. So now everything has sounded like sunshines and easy. Let's transition into what the real world of being a TO, especially prior to this time, what it looks like, what it signifies, some of the adversities you guys have faced, and really kind of taking account of some of the things that you are seeing as kind of bad practices. So this is an opportunity to go ahead and call out against that, because a lot of people are entering into this space not knowing how to operate, and they're getting started. We were all there too. So we all had to start somewhere, figure out what works, figure out how the communities react to things, figure out what workflows work best, logistics. We all had to teach ourselves a logistics degree without actually going to college for it, essentially. So this is that time where it's not necessarily isolating on Oklahoma. It's isolating on anything that we've seen in the industry, things that are just giant kind of, no, I don't like this, but that correlate to us in regards to things that we've experienced firsthand. And I want to talk a little bit earlier on the collegiate side, because that's a whole nother bag of worms in itself, but to kind of set the tone and kind of break the ice on this topic and let it kind of be this more kind of awareness kind of opportunity instead of this kind of going at anybody. So in the collegiate scene, there's a lot of red tape. There's a lot of governance. There's a lot of politics involved, because we're talking about a OU brand where you can't go outside on the streets of Oklahoma and North Texas without seeing that logo somewhere. And so that means that there's a lot of governance that goes into its place. So that's the additional layer that I have on top of still trying to do exactly what all of you are doing, which is blending those two worlds together to elevate a profile, to make a living, to standardize this thing. And especially with the demand only increasing exponentially now, what some of the things that have struggled with us is that if I know that I want to do an FGC event, I don't have that expertise. I'm going to reach out to Ricky. If I need to do an activation in Tulsa, which will more than likely happen because of the outreach and the fact that we do have an OU campus location in Tulsa, that's going to have to happen too. I'm not going to do it myself, or at least not exclusively. I'm going to bring in these local experts because that will help me get the visibility, grow that reach, and further bolster the fact that the very things that we're going to teach degrees in, and the very things that we're going to teach curriculum for, and the very things that we offer scholarship for, is what this panel of experts in the space represent the end result. So now how do we reverse engineer that? So for me, a lot of the biggest things that I advise other collegiate peers has been to never, ever take the community for granted as is, period. They will turn on you very, very quick. And if there are already leaders that are there, try to find common ground, find those compromises, try and figure out what can benefit each other. And that's why I had a lot of confidence reaching out to each one of you to form this panel, because we have that kind of working relationship. And some of it's been explored, especially with Jack and especially with Ricky, and Rashard and Puyan, at least have had loose conversations of just general events or being in events in our own tracks, doing our own thing. And so I really want to just open the floor now to talking about things that have been frustrating you a little bit, about things that have helped you get to this juncture, and what you're seeing actually as a reversion of it. Like what's not helping us, what's not moving this forward, what's setting us back, and what's happening in the industry that we need to curb, educate on why not to do, and how do we get to that next stage. So I'm going to kick it off with Ricky.
Oh, nice. Well, where do I start? Look, I'll say the number one thing I can just say, just if you're out there listening, as a TO, I'm going to warn you guys. The one thing I never would understand is when someone says, they'll come and post in our group and they'll say, we're trying to raise the awareness on esports. And I'm like, raise the awareness. The awareness is here. That's why you post in here, and it's 1,000 people in this group. We're already aware, you know? And so it's always kind of trippy where someone will post $1,000 event and you get to that event and there's three PS4s. It's kind of like, all right, you needed our help really bad. Or they're not even, you know, we'll inbox some of our gamers and say, hey, you guys should reach out to this company. These guys know what they're doing. They could help you. So, like, that's the main frustrating thing is people telling us to be aware about esports when we've been here for a super long time. Another thing I can always just notice is just sometimes players, they're not aware. You know, they think they know they're competitive gamers, and nothing's more demoralizing to them. Just like with you, Rashard, they find out that there's not going to be 65-inch TVs there. They're going to be on a 24-inch. It's a culture shock kind of thing, you know, when they find out things are different than what they are, you know. So I think that's the most frustrating thing. I think all the guys in here could agree with that, is seeing these big companies come in and think like, oh, we got a $10,000 prize pool. We're going to post it in your group, and everybody in this group is going to come show up. And that's just never the case.
Yeah, to build on what you said just real quick, Ricky, once we had some people ask us to assist with like some of the programming they were doing at like a convention kind of thing, right? And they were going to put on like a League of Legends tournament. We were under the impression we were going to help run their League of Legends tournament. And we pretty much found out eventually that they just wanted to do all of the League of Legends tournament and us push it to all of the people, and then they would do it all. And I'm like, so you're asking me to bring you people who will pay you money, and then if you do a bad job, we put our name on it, and people are going to blame us.
And they're going to blame you.
And it's kind of like they see it like, oh, you're being, I don't know what the word would be, you know,
confrontational,
territorial about your community, like you should
monopoly.
And it's like, no, I don't. You are some of the same people that ran the bad tournaments, not HXC, but you are some of the people that ran some of these bad tournaments. That was the reason we made our own. And then here, 3 years later, you are saying we're going to run a League of Legends tournament.
Exactly.
And I'm like, so I know what you're talking about. Just somebody who shows up and they're like, we want to throw money at it and have all the people that you've organized play in it. And you're like, I don't know if I trust you to do a good job based on your track record.
Exactly.
And so I don't know if I want to attach my name to it if you won't let us help. We were totally down when it was like, we thought we would be the ones running the tournament to assist it. But then when they told us that they were going to be calling shots, we were very unsure of that.
Right. And another frustrating thing, and I'm going to let you guys put in on it too, is let's say there is a big convention here in Oklahoma. Another thing that me and Rashard started noticing is there'll be a big tournament in OKC or Tulsa or anywhere. And companies are reaching out to companies from out of town. I'm like, there's people right here in your backyard, in your city, 10 minutes away from you. And you're reaching out to somebody from Chicago, Kansas. There's no knocking these other guys. otherwise. But I'm just saying, we have the resources right here in our backyard, and it seems like everybody's always trying to recruit from out of town. And honestly, that's kind of bad because you're taking somebody from their scene to come here.
Right.
And then what it is nobody knows those people. They can't trust them.
Mm-hmm.
So there's another red flag.
So I want to add some business perspective because, again, from the collegiate scene, also from my perspective, there's some other conversations that people that are looking for TOs or people that are looking for services that can spin these up need to be looking at it from this perspective too, because we're talking about finances. At the end of the day, money is one of the biggest drivers for an organization like that may contract a third party. Well, when you contract with a local TO, you are gaining access to that community if you put them in power. If you put out a television ad or a radio ad or a social media ad, you're attacking or you're approaching it or marketing to a broad audience in the hope that you're getting that demographic. So yes, this is a topic that doesn't have as much overhead as other industries in that regard. And if you have a community TO that represents, over 1,000 people, over 500 people, well, all 1,000 of those people are the demographic, not just the chance at 1,000 people. It's very targeted. So, and that is absolutely one of the value gains of working with local TOs that do know their communities and do know this, because when we talk, a lot of people talk about esports and it's a singular term, but we can all agree League of Legends and Smash Brothers have nothing to do with each other culturally. So you can't look at esports as a singular term. You wouldn't go in and look at OU and just say sports. No, you would be specifically targeting OU football, OU men's basketball, OU women's basketball. And that's the same thing, is that we're kind of at the thing where people are still processing the word and how to utilize it correctly in just their own verbiage. But inside of that singular word, just like traditional sports, in a lot of ways, there are individual sports. And in that world, football and fencing are not the same thing, just like League of Legends. And that. Right. So Puyan, what are some things that have caused you some strife and things that you'd like to see changed from your vantage point and your experiences?
I think one of the big things that really I think is frustrating is I get this a lot. I get a lot of people who inbox me and they're just like, hey, I want to start a weekly tournament, or I want to start a bi-weekly tournament, or I want to start a monthly tournament. And it's just like, I mean, okay, why? And they're just like, oh, well, there's not one in insert small town in Oklahoma that has 3 local guys who play the game in my garage. And I was just kind of like, what? And even like slightly bigger towns, let's say there's like 10 people who consistently play in a city in Oklahoma. But it's not a huge city, and it's like hour and a half away from the next big city that has consistent events. I can understand the frustration, but then I'm like, yeah, do whatever you got to do. They then hit me up and they're just like, people aren't coming to my tournament from out of town. And it's one of those things where it's like, well, here's the difference. And it's something you said earlier. It's like, if you build it, they will come isn't true. And it's true. It's not true at all. If you host it, they will not come because there's reasons. And if you're like, hey, we have 10 people who show up, you should drive an hour and a half to come play with those 10 people versus, hey, we have 45 people who show up. You should drive an hour and a half to play with 45 people. Those are very different things. And it's just something that people don't understand, and it blows my mind. And I think the most frustrating thing since being in this industry is, and why I think I've been so successful, strangely, but it frustrates me, is basic logistics that I think are logical. Like, oh yeah, this makes perfect sense as to why you should or shouldn't do something, is something people don't understand out the gate. I never understood why, because it's always been second nature, which is why I've been good at my job. But it's just like, yeah, why would I drive an hour and a half to play with 10 people versus 45 people? And it's just, people don't see those comparisons. The other thing is, and it can be frustrating, is like a lot of times, like touching on what we talked about earlier, there are companies and businesses who want to get into esports. And then there's 2 types right now. There's one who will say, hey, I'll give you guys $100,000 to run this event. And then I have to tell them, no, I don't want $100,000 to run this event, because here's what's going to happen. You're not going to make more than $100,000. You're not even going to make 5% of what you just gave me. And then you're going to say, hey, wait a minute, did you steal from me? And it's going to be a whole issue, and you're never going to do esports again. So out the gate, I have to tell you, no, it's a bad idea. And then all these companies don't understand. They're just like, I throw money and I make money. And it's like, that's not how that works. I don't know who in your advertising department told you that's how that worked, or the marketing department told you that, but don't do that. And it's just
Right.
things like that that people just don't get. And a lot of people don't understand that there's just a younger audience in esports currently. So they'll be like, yeah, I want to have this event at a bar. And it's like, that's fine. It's 21 and up, correct? Like, make sure that it stays that way. Yeah, of course. Hey, man, only like 10 people are coming out. And it's just like, well, in the city you live in, 75% of your players are under the age of 21. So, maybe we should have run a different game, something else. It's just people don't think hard enough, I think, about specific decisions that they make in event organization. And it's very frustrating. And it's the last thing big companies do that's kind of frustrating is a lot of big companies get swayed because there are a lot of fast talking, just buzzword dropping people in the industry who'll sit there and tell you a bunch of buzzwords, and then they'll be like, oh my God, this person says a bunch of things I don't understand. Clearly they know something. They get hired, and then they're in my inbox like, hey, can you do this thing for me? And it's just like, no. It's like, they're paying you like 5 figures. Why am I doing this work for, what are you asking me to do it for free? No, of course not. Like, so things like that happen, which is very prevalent in esports right now. And those are very difficult things to deal with. And really the only thing you can do is ignore those people in your inbox, realize that sometimes, even though you want to be a TO, it's just not feasible. And it's just about just grow your local communities. You don't have to have a tournament. You can just have people come over and play consistently. It doesn't have to be something big. And that's, I think, where people kind of get confused, is they put too much competition into the elements of the thing of the esports, and it's more about the community than anything else.
Right.
Everything in esports is unique because it's driven by communities. It's probably the same in more traditional sports, but there's so much money and so much just division, and there's so many different sports, it can feel very different. But esports, despite all our games being different, has that sense of unity in the fact that we can appreciate what other people are doing in the same sphere. And that's something that's been just fantastic, because I can play and watch League of Legends and enjoy it. And then, but it doesn't mean I want to compete in it. It doesn't mean I follow the competitive scene, but I can enjoy it. And it's the same boat for somebody who plays Mortal Kombat to watch a Smash tournament or something like that. And that's awesome.
Awesome. So that's a great, before I push to Rashard, one thing that I wanted to break down there is gaming and esports are not entirely the same thing. Gaming is more that community sector love of just being involved, engaged, and part of something. Esports is the showcase piece. Esports is that flagship competition where they do have a fan base of it, but it is the smaller percentile. It is the thing that most people translate as the marketable thing, however. But without community, you have no one that competes in it. Without community, you have no one that's a fan base of it that will invest into it, subscribe to it, buy merch from it, will support that company or support that TO because they haven't taken the time to build those inroads, to have that personable handoff of understanding, or even being in a community where something's happening and saying, hey, no one's heard from this person in a week. They usually are active every other day. That little bit of consideration in any community should translate, and it does here in gaming communities, because if we were to define the majority of gamers, not all, but a large portion, they're very introverted. And in that same scenario, they get extroverted when you put them in a room of the same people. And that's why if you build it, if you build it, they will come doesn't apply here, because it took a while for people to come out of their shell. They would join a community, they would lurk for a month, 3 months, a year plus. And then all of a sudden, they came out of nowhere and they're going at 500 miles an hour because now they have finally caught up with what that community is going with. And now you wouldn't ever be able to tell if they were an introvert if you were just a part of that community too. Very real scenarios that all of us, we probably know somebody within our communities or a multitude that signifies. And that's what happens when we see big brands that are not sensitive to those cultures organically come in and try to flex without using other things that have that community alignment. And that's where the disconnect comes. And most companies should be looking at that as a positive. Why? Because you don't have to invest as much. And the games will only grow as long as you organically grow with those opportunities. But coming into the space, dropping a $250,000 pot on a big national tournament is a different thing than a local community tournament and trying to galvanize a region, which is more interested in that community aspect. There are tons of people that go to Smash Dojos that don't care who wins. They just want to go and be a part of that vibe, of that feel, of that catching up with everyone. And I imagine right after COVID really drops, those Smash Dojos are going to be monstrous because people are tired of being at home. And we're not going to talk about online Nintendo netcode. So, Rashard, let's transition to you. What are some of the things that you are seeing as growing practices of concerns, things that really frustrate you and that we would like to change?
First and foremost, to any organizers out there, what I learned is you can't throw money at it to fix it. You know what I'm saying? Partner with your local peers. We're not really competitive. Oklahoma's not big enough for that scene, and build a community. So 2 things that really grind my gears. The first one is when an organization comes out of nowhere. Players haven't been to any event, supported anything locally at all. We have $1,500, $3,500 on this pot at this place. Like Puyan says, 21 up. So you already cut off, anyone 14, you know what I'm saying, to 20 can't get in. And they promise all of these things. And then the first thing that happens in my inbox, in Ricky inbox, hey, are y'all working with these guys? Did y'all know about this event? They never did. Then time goes on, and then they start hitting them up. Hey, reach out to Ricky, reach out to Rashard, reach out to Puyan. And they know about us, but they said we got it. A week before the event, we're lacking on this, we're lacking on that. Can you guys come help us on this? Last minute. And then, like Ricky said, you get there, it's 3 setups. They're trying to run 4 games. It's not going to work. So what in turns happened to this is, like, we're not trying to monopolize or anything, but we're protecting our brand, our games. Somebody's going to come from Texas. Somebody's going to come from Arkansas. This going to be their first Oklahoma event, and it's going to be trash. And then they're not going to come back to the Super Bit Wars and the King of the Sticks and any big Smash events we have, because off of that, Oklahoma throw trash events. That's one thing. Another thing is when these conventions, when the casinos, when these school districts finally open up, because I swear in the last 5 years, one of us reached out to them and tried to partner with them and do something, and they didn't want to do it at the time because we were ahead of the curve. And then they pop out of nowhere, didn't come back and consult anybody. I almost feel disrespectful. And you see this company from Chicago, from Texas, from New York. Even my HBCU at Langston is outsourcing somebody from New York, giving them the bag when they could have did it. I would have did them a favor and got other people involved. That's real frustrating to me. And same thing, it'd be like Tokyo and Tulsa when they weren't using OK Gamers, and then they hire a company from out of state, and then that company comes in, promise all these big things, but can't even advertise to the local community.
Right.
And then a week or 2 before, hey, we heard about you.
Yeah,
Can
we
you
need some help.
Same thing Jack said. So now we're at the point, I don't know how you operate. So even if I come out and they're trying to throw money at me last minute, it's like, I don't even want to put my company's name on it, because if it's trash, then they're going to put it back on us.
Right.
And in the first place, if they knew the logistics, they knew they had somebody who ran shooters, somebody who ran fighters, reached out to us. We're probably going to be a discounted price, and you go get somebody who's going to vouch for the community and bring them out. Because at the end of the day, they want to support us. You know what I'm saying? I didn't hold too much value in my name, Rashard. I didn't hold too much value in a Puyan or Ricky, and I'm starting to get to know Jack a little bit better and what he does. But our names on top of our communities go a little bit farther than our actual organizations. And is Rashard running it? Is Ricky running it? It's Smash that Puyan put in on it. That go, and it's frustrating to try to convey that, because the people know. But these people who are popping out of nowhere, because once again, they think they're starting it. They think they're the first, which they're not. That's real frustrating.
And there's a point I want to close it on, because obviously there's no one's going to negate the passion, obviously, of this, because I'm literally calling upon the very thing that I know you guys are suppressing to lash out with. But this isn't about gatekeeping. This isn't about inhibiting people coming into the space. This is about holding the standards for which they put their work in to build to this point, not being thrown away. And that will collectively set us behind as a region versus pushing us forward. And it's not even a big thing if we really think about it, because again, we just talked about the fact that if you market with a TO that has, the local community, you're getting targeted marketing, not broad stroke marketing. You're literally reaching the core demographic of who you're trying to build an event for in the first place. So that in itself, if you add up all your advertising dollars, cut that down to like 10% of that initial budget. And so, and that alone is visibility and advocacy for an event. It doesn't matter if it's a $500,000 pot or a $100,000 pot or a $100 pot. People want to be a part of a community where they're going to be. We're not evolved enough as an industry, and in regards to a community, of the elevation of these types of partnerships that has allowed us to have that fragmentation of people just coming out of the streets out of nowhere and just being, oh my, who is this person, and just dominate a tournament. The communities are too vetted for that. They're too. There's too much organic grassroots energy and holistic approach to building it, not just because it started last year, but because it's been over here for a decade plus, and nobody's taking notice of it in a big way like it has been now. So I want to really draw that point home, because it's not a topic that anybody can't be involved in. And it's not even that these people on this panel are the only ways to approach it. But if you really want to maximize an investment in expenditure of capital in this region, then you have allies, you have resources, and you have people that can execute on a very high caliber that bring a full package to the table. And even if they don't, their networks will come together to do that very thing if your intentions are right. So, Jack, what are some of the things that you've been struggling with in your journey, and what are the things that you wish could change?
Talk about a lot of stuff. To tack on, though, real quick to what you were saying, I think a lot of people feel like if they throw money at stuff, right, that it'll attract people, and then they kind of want to just suddenly become like the new community for those people, so that way they have them there and they can market to them the next time.
Buy loyalty.
But like we talked about, right, it doesn't usually work. We had a tournament on a day, and then we found out later that there was someone doing a $20,000 League of Legends tournament at a casino or something on the same day, and we were a little bit worried, like, oh, I hope like we don't like lose too many people going to this one with this giant prize pool. 3 teams went to that one, 16 teams came to ours, and they were on the same day, and a lot of the people in ours knew about it. And then another different thing that grinds my gears, the 3 teams that went to that thing, they basically got there, and they kind of looked at it, and they were like, we're not going to give out the $20,000 prize pool. So that's one thing. And 2, even if you had a big prize pool, right, that you wanted to put out there, whatever it is that you're trying to gain in the process of doing that, if you work with a community, right, they can bring the people that they often work with and that play in their events to this event. Those people can trust in the quality of the event because they're working with the same, community organizers that they often work with. And that some of that marketing, that prize pool might help them build up their community. And then the next time you run an event, you can get even more people. It's one thing that is hard, and some of you guys may run into this as a tournament organizer / community organizer, is managing a community kind of sucks sometimes. And I don't think that some of these people realize that
it sucks all the time. Be honest.
Right.
It sucks all the time.
A lot of drama.
My record is 6 days that I spent talking to somebody who was upset about a rule. That's just like DMing them back and forth, just trying to explain out why it works a certain way, kind of just like working through the logic of things. Just like I'm basically like explaining like the entire like philosophy behind our tournament organizing style. And you just do this for like 6 days. And that person, this was like years ago, that person was very angry, and they still play on our stuff, like we don't hold it against each other that we had this like 6-day like fight essentially. They still play in it. There's like a mutual respect. You show that you care by putting the time in to do those kinds of things. And a lot of these people that are the same groups that are just throwing money at something and wanting people to show up and start coming regularly don't understand that that's going to be a part of it, because you have to try to make efforts to keep your community healthy. I'm sure everyone here has had to at some point remove someone from a community or something. And that's never an easy thing to do, right? You can't just be a platform in this. YouTube and Twitch and stuff like that, they try to make some efforts to just be a platform and use policies, but occasionally somebody's not healthy for the community and it's hurting the community. And if you let it just go on and you don't get involved and know what's happening and get feedback, it can destroy the whole thing. That's how all these people that are in here have had to deal with that. That's why they've been around for so long. We've all seen little things pop up. Maybe they didn't have as much success as they wanted. Maybe things got toxic. We had some of the people that were toxic in our organization that we removed from it try to start their own thing, which quickly fizzled out. They were like, well, everyone's going to want to play in ours because they all agree with us or something. And then
They saw the real work.
right. Those are kind of generally to build, which is a lot of what you guys were saying, kind of grind my gears. Like Rashard mentioned, another thing, there was a different convention that reached out to us 2 or 3 weeks before the convention, asking us to like, hey, we want you to run the League of Legends tournament. I'm like, well, your thing's been planned for like a year, so obviously nobody signed up, and that's why you're reaching out to us now. And then it's the same thing, right? It's like, if now that they bring you in the last 3 weeks, if it doesn't go well, they can kind of pin it on you a little bit or something. And you don't feel like you were a part of the process from the beginning. And again, it's not about gatekeeping. It's not them reaching out saying, help us, and you going like, no, fail, right? It's you going like, you didn't reach out to us from the beginning, and now it's not working out, and now you've set me up for failure, and we don't want that on our name. And it's not about gatekeeping, like Mike said, but a lot of people like to make it out like it is.
Yeah.
But you're just trying to do the best thing for the community and do the best thing for your reputation, which is important in maintaining that community.
Right.
And some people don't get it. Puyan, you were talking about how some people just say, well, I want to do this, right? And they have an idea and they think it's a good idea. And you're talking about how they're like kind of confused. I think, and this isn't like, I'm not trying to be offensive, right? But they're kind of naive / ignorant just to everything. We've all been doing this for a long time, and we take some of this knowledge for granted. Somebody who's new to it, they want to do something, but it turns out to just not be as feasible as they thought, or as different from what they thought. And sometimes they're not willing to see that side of it until something goes wrong, and then they're like, okay, wait, what were you telling me about before? But I don't know. There's just a lot of that. A lot of people who want to come into it and do it their way rather than working with people who've done it for a long time. And I think, from everything we've mentioned here, that oftentimes ends up being a mistake.
All right, well, let's start wrapping this up, and we have 2 questions from the community, and let's bring this back home, which is what this is all about, which is protecting the homes that you had a part in building and you absolutely want to protect, not for the sake of protecting it, but because it's a part of something you want to be involved in and are happy to be a part of. And the first question is definitely probably Smash focused. One question I have is, how do you make players come back to tournaments? AKA, how do you encourage new players to keep coming back? So who wants to take that? This is definitely going to be, I want to target probably Ricky on this one to kick it off.
It's easy. The best way to get players to come back is the basics. If your tournament is well ran, they're going to come back, whether it's $1 prize pool or $1,000 prize pool. You got to make sure everything runs smoothly. If it's not ran smoothly, you can pay out $5,000 and people will bash it as if it was the worst thing that ever happened. So the basics. Make sure brackets are on time. Everything is ran. And things happen in the background. A lot of us put out fires all the time. But if you can just handle the basics, people will come back. You don't need to. The crazy thing is, you don't even have to run ads and stuff like that. I think Puyan agree with that. Is just once you got everybody in, you're not just like walking around like with your chest out. People come back and they want to hang around you anyway. So the basics.
Keep it touchable. Keep it inviting. Anybody else want to add to that before we move on to the next question?
Yeah, because I think that question is from my boy Sleepy out of Durant, Oklahoma. Shout outs to you. He's a cool guy. One of the big things you have to realize, especially when you're in a smaller scene, is that there will be like 2 to 4 people who are excited competitively because they're going to win the money, right? So for them, the cost is no object because they're going to keep winning. For everybody else, they are losing money every time they go and hang out and play in this tournament. So you have to give them something that makes it worth their time. Now, whether that means you have to make the tournaments cheaper, whether that means you stop hosting a tournament at a location where you have to pay a venue fee and you start hosting it out of like your garage or something like that, you're just going to have to try to get creative. But the big thing is you expand the tournament experience to beyond, I went 0-2 in bracket and I leave. And that's really what keeps people from coming back, is they lose consistently, and then they leave because there's nothing out to get out of it. You have to be, as an organizer, constantly talking to people, making them feel welcome, making them feel like they're part of the community, learning about people. And that's something I've been very successful in. And I've thankfully been able to help get open doors for people to meeting all kinds of fantastic people that they've included in their lives now, that they're friends, and gotten them job opportunities from just knowing people. And that's the thing, is that you're bringing them into a community. So you have to stop thinking about it as how do I get them to come back to my tournament, and how do I get them from leaving my community? And I think there you'll start to come up with good ideas on how to fix it.
Which means not always throwing them to the wolves against the best player in our region first round.
Balance
Yeah.
that bracket. Balance that bracket.
Seeding is seeding, though. You know,
Yeah.
Right.
you can get
I wanna
creative.
wanna
I
jump
think
on
if you're
that too.
small enough, I'm just going to something specific. If you're small enough, you have like 8 people, you can do 2 round robin pools and get them more for their money.
Yeah.
You know, like you can try to mix some stuff up and try some stuff. But if you want more specific answers, literally inbox any of us.
Yep.
I know you can contact all of us. You're in Oklahoma, so you'll find us pretty easily.
Yep.
So.
And I'll let you guys plug as we close this out in a second. Rashard, anything you want to add to that, or Jack?
Yeah, just real quick, retention, we know our regulars. So identifying those new players, have them while you setting up the bracket, have them next to you, talking to them. I like to find out, how'd you find out about the event? You know what I'm saying? Educate them on everything else that's going on, because it might go quick and you're in the middle of working, they go 0-2 and they disappear. So you want to have that conversation. I used to try to wait till after the event, but they wouldn't be there.
Yep.
So you got to do it before you start, while you're setting up. Educate them, let them know what's going on. And then when it's larger, you got more than 8 or 12, have that redemption bracket, the ones who go 0-2 and get them an extra game in there. And let them know, you know what I'm saying, get with this player. He's one of the better players in the state. He'll stay and play with you. And just because a lot of people who are new will come in and don't know how personal everybody is. They probably just know how they act online. We got some players that are trolls online, then they're a teddy bear in person. But yeah, just identifying those new people and educating them on everything to come back. And I promise you, they'll give you at least 1 or 2 more tries, even if they're losing.
Yeah. Jack, anything you want to add on that question?
I mean, I'm pretty similar boat to these guys. I think at the end of the day, it boils down to like 2 words. It's fun and community. You guys are saying, don't put them against the hardest person, right? Like, that's less fun. Give them more opportunities to play. That's more fun. Reach out to them, give them opportunities to meet people, make an event more about, include some more socializing and stuff. And that's the kind of stuff that you can't get anywhere else. Like, there's a million online tournaments out there. You go on Battlefy, sign up for one. You'll never talk to like a normal person at any point during it. You do these like local things, and it's a very different environment. It's community and fun gets people back.
Awesome. All right. Well, then, in our second question, this is from JK Sonic. When offline events come back, how much harder will it be to rebuild the community effort that was present beforehand?
Okay, I'll start real quick.
Go ahead, Jack. You guys had a conversation about this.
You guys can think about it. So we're in a very interesting position. We run our league, like the regular season, in the past at least, online, and then culminate that in a big in-person event with like 12 teams. And then people that were playing in the tournament will come and spectate and hang out, even if they're not playing in those playoffs at the end. And so that's what we did for a long time. And we hit like a peak of like 40 teams towards this period that was pretty great, but we were getting bigger. And so we needed to start like finding different venues. The Microsoft Store was getting a little tiny. And it was tough at that point in time. It's hard to even imagine with how many esports arenas there are around now. But at that specific time, just 2 years ago, UCOs wasn't done. Several of the ones that exist now didn't exist. And it was hard to find a venue. Places like Sunny's and RTZ and stuff, they had not, fallen by the wayside or whatever as well. So some of the esports arenas that did exist back in like 2017, 2016, they were not able to sustain themselves at that time. So it was that dry spell before all these ones we have now and after that wave. So we didn't have those venues. We worked with OU and found some that like worked solidly well, but there were some hiccups here and there.
Sure.
I have had a couple hiccups with some administrative stuff.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about Cross
and
either.
and cross the room that was at one point meant to be an esports lab had a hard time with one switch powering like 4 gaming computers. So it was difficult to find that venue. So for a short time, and we thought it would be a short time, we started doing the finals online while we waited for the UCO Esports Arena to be completed, along with all these other projects that are going on. So we could have an in-person venue again. And then after doing all, like, you know, the majority of a year of all online, then COVID happened and we were once again stuck in all online. And so, like I was talking about, community and fun are what keep a lot of people coming back. And those people haven't left our community, but a lot of them have stopped playing actively, waiting for that component to come back. But, you know, we've adapted and we tweaked it up and tried to make the online experience more of a focal point, of course, when it's all online. And we are like once again at that peak that we were at before going into all this online period. But now our player base, that our active player base, is, and I say active player base because there's a lot of people in the community that pay attention and follow it and talk and stuff, but they're not, you know, playing in the tournament. You
Right.
know what I mean.
Right.
And it's about, it's hard to say exactly because there's like 5 people on a team, but like roughly 50-50 in terms of people that are too far from Oklahoma to be able to participate in an in-person event. And then the other half are the people that kind of would prefer the in-person event. So we're at a point where if we've had to adapt over the last 2 years to be more online focused. And we definitely want to go back to in-person because that's kind of the heart of it. It's one of my favorite things to do. And to also stay true to a lot of people that have stuck with it even through the online period. And so that'll be its own challenge due to COVID, is we're going to have to start to identify what it is we need to do going forward to not alienate the large online community we've built while also going back to catering to the portion of our community that is in-person based. So going forward, you know, we were always like in-person only, and then we became online only, and now coming out of that, we're going to have to be a bit of both.
Bizarro hybrid. Yeah.
And
so,
clean. I'm scared about the headsets alone.
Sure.
How are we going to keep the headsets clean for the commentators?
Right. Well, okay, guys, I'm gonna call it right there as we.
Oh, sorry, guys.
Try to be respectful. No, be respectful to the time. As TOs, we know that a lot of times things happen, but we have a Rocket League tournament to get to. Jack, where do we find you? How do we find GetRECt?
GetRECt.club, Jack at GetRECt.club, or Jack at GetRECt.club. LinkedIn, Jack Counts.
Cool.
That's about it.
Rashard, how do we get a hold of you?
All social media is real easy. Game Over HD TV. Pull us up. You'll see the shield. Hit that like, hit that follow.
Ricky.
Everything is always HXC Gaming. It's HX as in X-ray C Gaming. You can follow me on Twitter. It's Timmy Skorcher with a K, like Mortal Kombat Skorcher with a K. Or Facebook to Ricky McNeil. Inbox me.
And Puyan, close us out.
You can find me on Twitter at Perfect Side Dish. Some people will get that reference, other people will not, and I'm disappointed if you don't. Also, you can find me on just about every form of social media as just Puyan Nikju. So
awesome. Well, gentlemen, I appreciate your time, and please, and I'm also glad that you're here. Because again, as I started this panel with, OU's developments would not be as successful or as far along if it wasn't for the advice of our TOs that led the charge well before the time of the elevation of one of the flagship universities of the region and state. So I appreciate your presence, and I definitely wanted to create an environment for you guys to advocate and share what this world is, because not once did we really even talk about playing games themselves. And that's what so many people are fixated on. We just uncovered the fact that there's a lot to this to build good programming, good communities that we do welcome business ventures and expansion on. However, this is 10 years in the works. This is 10 plus years in the works of community development, not just something that is brand new. So for my developments, if you need to learn anything about OU, that is ou.edu/esports now. And we are going to take a small break as we transition to cover the Rocket League tournament as the extension of the Oklahoma City Police Athletics League fundraiser tournament. This panel was brought to you by the Oklahoma Energy FC, as well as Blue Cross Blue Shield of Oklahoma. And so we appreciate those sponsors supporting youth programs and helping us advocate for the things that we absolutely live, breathe, and are passionate about and want to see grow and flourish and grow and create opportunities for everyone. That's the true nature of what we're after and why we're all here. So you guys sit tight for a second as we transition out, and we will be back in about probably 10 to 15 minutes with the start and the conclusion of the rest of the day with Rocket League exclusive coverage.
We get to bridge the gap between us and kids. You know, they see us more as a friend.
You know, we like to see them grow up just hanging out with them. You know, they can ask us whatever they need to and feel comfortable with doing it.
Some kids don't really get the opportunity to do things like this at home. So this gives them a chance to do it at school and meet new people.
It's been awesome. I've never played volleyball, I've never knew the rules, anything. And now I understand it more, and I actually like it.
PAL to Oklahoma City is like water is to a desert. And just watching PAL evolve is just like magnificent.
To be honest, this program is so fun. We've actually made a couple friends, and it's very hard to do that during this pandemic, especially.
The OKC PAL community, it's really interactive with all the players and people that you can meet in it. It's helped a lot, especially since the virus has been keeping everybody at home, and so second best thing is PAL.
This has helped him meet other friends. It's helped bring his voice out. It's just done a lot for him, and believe me, he looks forward to it every day.
I'm just very happy that this was a thing.
I think it's a good program for the kids and parents and cops. It's a good relationship.
If you support a child, they do better, a lot better.
Because I like playing sports, so when basketball season comes around, I don't have to be home bored.
The teacher's responsibility. The teachers have to work hard, work for your grades, and to be good at school.
They showed me a lot of things that I didn't know at all.
It's just a mechanism to teach life skills within the context of sports.